Talk about tonight, and we've done a lot of looking at different treatments for that street. We'll come talk to you about that particular intersection. I know there'll be some other discussion night. When we look at whether or not to put intersections in, we look at traffic counts and a lot of other features. But I think as a lot of folks know here, we have a lot of ideas about how to make that street a lot safer. Okay.
There you go.
Get a question over here. Mr. Galloway.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for coming to the Corona area. I'm happy to know that you made those statements about the people who are homeless, because the homeless situation is growing. But I'd like to also tell you that we have a program called Galloway's Enterprise, where we take families from homeless shelters to see a Broadway play. So we're doing something to help the homeless situation. Just to let you know that.
Thank you very much for that. And that, I want to just, first of all, personally thank you. And that makes a huge difference, particularly folks who are down and are struggling to have an experience like that is very uplifting. I also want to remind you, and I'm saying this to everyone, use the example that you gave to make a point, that this is a human reality. And again, more and more it's people who are working. I want to make this point because I can't say it enough. A lot of people going to shelter now are working now, but can't make ends meet. Or have been working and want to work again. Our job is to find a way to treat them respectfully and positively on the way to getting back on their feet and getting to a better situation. That's part of why we believe if we reorient the shelters to a more community-based approach, it's going to come with more respect for people too. Because bluntly, a lot of people have said to us who have become homeless that if they're in a whole different borough and a whole different community, a lot of times they feel outcast and they feel shunned. But we need to tell people we're going to help you get back on your feet. But the other point I want to say is we really value family as a part of this equation. This is something really important, and our Commissioner, Steve Banks, our Social Service Commissioner, led the way on this. For years and years, we were saying to folks who are homeless, well, we wish you would get back together with your family. Sometimes that'll work, meaning if they have extended family or different generations that might be able to help take them in. Some places that work, sometimes it doesn't. We didn't make it easy. What we decided to do, and it's a program called Pathway Home, is to actually directly subsidize families who will bring a loved one who is homeless into their home. So, for example, if someone's homeless and their aunt has space for them, or their uncle has space for them, we should help the aunt or uncle to pay their rent to thank them for taking in someone who is homeless and a part of their family, and support them in that. And we ultimately, besides being more humane, because it's what's better than being with a family member if you're coming through a situation like that, but instead of spending money on a hotel or whatever else, why aren't we giving that to a human being, to a family member? Then everybody wins in the equation. That's something the city didn't do. Now we're doing it.
So I just want to say, to take advantage of this opportunity, for those of you that like to ask a question in Spanish, you can ask your question in Spanish, and then I'll translate for the mayor. So just...
No entiendo.
Tú entiendes bastante.
No.
And by the time you get out of here, you will.
Tell them that in Spanish.
Yes. Well, yes.
Okay. Buenas tardes. Mi pregunta es acerca de los college. Habían dicho que iban a hacer los college, los programas free, y eso es lo que quiero saber. De la universidad, sí.
Her question is about our CUNY system, our CUNY colleges, and she had heard that there's a potential of having free tuition to the colleges. She wanted to know if you can answer that question.
Yeah, the state, so the CUNY system is run by the state of New York, although the city contributes to the community colleges a very substantial amount. The state is talking about a program now to provide free tuition for people up to a certain income level, which is a very good idea. We still want to see how that's going to work, because I'm still not 100% clear how it's going to work. But I very much support this, and it's being discussed right now as part of the state budget discussion up in Albany.
Okay. We have a question here, and then I'm going to come right here. See.
Mi nombre es Verónica Ramírez de Mujeres en Movimiento. En Corona existe la necesidad de calles seguras para nuestras familias. Y como usted sabe, hay un plan para rediseñar la calle 111, lo cual dará más espacio a las familias para cruzar la pista y una vía para bicicletas en el trayecto hacia el Parque Flushing Corona.
Dame un segundo. Okay, so her name is Veronica, and as you know, they have been working with Mujeres en Movimiento, which is a group of mothers that has organized, and their biggest request is to make our streets safer. And there is a plan for 111, and that's where I cut her off.
Como mujeres,
With the microphone, hold on.
Micrófono.
There you go.
como mujeres que transportamos a nuestros hijos todos los días, el rediseño de estas calles nos beneficia. Llevamos más de 3 años trabajando con la concejal Lisa para conseguir estos cambios, pero luego de muchos intentos, la Junta Comunitaria 4 se rehusó a votar para decidir aprobar este plan.
So she's been working with my office for many years. As you know, many of the mothers have to take their children to school and travel with their children, and their main focus has been to make sure that the streets are safe. In a recent vote in the community board, and there's been lots of conversations with the community board for it.
Mi pregunta es, ¿usted nos ayudará para lograr aprobar los cambios en la calle 111 y proteger a nuestras familias?
Understood
Sí. Not only see, but claro que sí. Look, 111th Street has been a long process, as you described. And these are always complicated issues, and there's a good reason why communities want to talk them through and think about them. We've worked with the council member, we've worked with other elected officials, the community board, community groups. I'm comfortable that the right thing to do is to move ahead with our efforts to protect people on 111th Street, that we will continue always to work with community leaders and the community board as we go along, because these things, you put them in place and then you learn by doing if you have to make any other kinds of changes and additions, etc. But this plan is ready to move, so we're going to move it.
Yo quería hacerle esta pregunta que tal vez no se la han hecho o tal vez no se quedan callados. Es por qué el Partido Demócrata no presenta una defensa más unificada para los migrantes indocumentados con informe y base más a base de la verdad, porque muchos nos informamos por medios, por internet, por lo que quiera, que la verdad X cosa, ¿no? Y mucha gente no sale por el miedo, pero básicamente...
See? Okay. Exactly como, okay. So her question is, she wishes that the Democratic Party and their leadership would be clearer in their message, because she finds that many undocumented people are getting misinformation from the internet, even from some media outlets. That's very confusing, and many of them would not be here today to even ask the question because they're fearful. So it's about getting clear information, and where could they get the clear information to their questions?
Look, there's a lot of fear. There is, and I'm not missing it for a moment. And this is part of why when I talk to people here but all over the country, this is why, for example, the NYPD does not ask documentation status. Because if you create an atmosphere of fear, people will not participate. If someone's fearful, they're not going to come forward as they're a witness to a crime. If they're fearful, they're not going to talk about even if they've been a victim of a crime, because who would do that if you might get deported? So we're trying to make clear, I agree with you that perhaps the Democratic Party and are certainly a lot of the people around the country haven't always given the clearest message. But let me talk about the message we're giving right here, which is the NYPD is going to protect people, not ask documentation status, not act as enforcement agents, period. There's no exceptions to that. The same with schools. Teachers are not going to ask documentation status. In fact, we made very clear that if ICE agents come to a school, they're not allowed in the school. And remember, we have NYPD officers who are school safety agents who have very clear instructions that ICE agents are not allowed on our city property. That doesn't, if they have a legal warrant, we will address that, but they're not allowed to come in the door. And I think what we're trying to do here in this city is say, everything that has to do with the city of New York involves respect for people regardless of documentation status, including our ID program, IDNYC. And if someone is threatened with deportation specifically, not a rumor or a fear, but actually has the danger of being deported, we have made available legal services to help protect their rights. And that's something actually Nisha Agarwal can come over and talk about how people get advantage of that. We'll tell you about Nisha in a second. So I think in this city we've sent a very clear and consistent message about how we want to support people, even though there is so much fear. Nisha is the head of Mayor's Office on Immigrant Affairs. So Nisha, if people have a need for legal help, if they are facing deportation, explain what they can do to get that help.
It's very easy. You call 311 and you ask for immigration legal help. And there are legal services in this community and across the 5 boroughs to be able to access that help.
And then the final thing I want to say, this is a difficult point because I understand that there's an atmosphere of fear, that the rumors spread. And the problem is sometimes there is an ICE agent somewhere, which is true now and bluntly was true in the previous presidency as well. And sometimes that report proves to be real. And then other times we've heard all over the city people saying, oh, there's ICE agents here, there's ICE agents there, someone got arrested when it turned out not to be true. We had many reports already of ICE agents being active in some place. It wasn't an ICE agent. It was some entirely different kind of person. Anytime we see ICE agents out there, the NYPD is trying to get immediately information to know what's going on. So the NYPD is giving a position to explain to communities whether it's real or not. But the fear is so much greater than the reality at this point. So what we're trying to do is tell people that, even though we understand the emotion, don't believe all the rumors. If there is a specific situation, we will provide you legal help. But you don't have to worry. If your child goes to school, once they're in the school building, they're in a safe zone. If you're dealing with an NYPD officer, you're safe. We need people to remember they have to keep participating in the life of the city, and that the city is going to have your back.
Good afternoon. My name is George Dixon. I'm district leader for the 35th Assembly District. My concern in our community as we develop and grow, particularly in Northern Boulevard, particularly Astoria Boulevard, the city told us a while back that there would never be parking meters. All of a sudden, parking meters appeared up and down these corridors. Now, the problem with that is that they've been appearing in front of housing, where our seniors, where people live throughout the community. Those corridors are the conduits for east and west transportation. So at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the folks, for example, from 114th Street, going back to Northern Boulevard, have no place to park their cars. If they park their cars, they're ticketed. Then further down the corridor, we have Langston Hughes, we have various schools. So the teachers, the people studying at the library, can no longer park their cars because someone arbitrarily decided we want 1 hour of parking meters. So this is an impact on all those who live in the community, and as the community grows, there are various cars. But the city said that they would remove them. It hasn't happened. Then on Astoria Boulevard, they decided to come along, and I'll be brief. 2-hour meters, where they're not really needed, where 2-hour meters could be used on Northern Boulevard. And I'm done here. 23rd Avenue, we lost a child the other night. There are no traffic controls from 94th Street all the way down to 102nd Street. That's the major circle. I'll never have.
Let me jump in, because again, you're raising very important issues, but I also want to keep a limit on each one so we can get around to a lot of people. Let me get our transportation commissioner into the mix here. Look, you're raising the traffic control issue. As you know how much I am devoted to Vision Zero, which is the effort to reduce the number of people we're losing to traffic accidents. We know, I'm going to speak broadly for a moment, and the commissioner can speak specifically. We know there's a lot of places in the city that need a lot more work to be safer. So Vision Zero is a constantly growing effort to make more intersections safe, make more streets safe. And that's just a physical reality. There's also a lot more NYPD enforcement that we're throwing into the mix. That is not always popular, but boy, are we seeing how it's saving lives, and that's our number one obligation. So if there's some place we need to focus on more, I want to make sure we're doing that. Commissioner will speak to that. On the second point about parking, I just want to make a broad comment before she speaks to the specifics. And look, I'm a homeowner in Brooklyn. Until I had this job, I had a car, I used my car all the time, and I would park every night after doing my work as a council member or a public advocate. And, you know, some nights I felt lucky if I only spent 15 or 20 minutes looking for a parking spot. And then there's those nights where you find one right away, and, you know, you
Thank every guy.
you think, yeah, you have a very religious moment. And so this is not a mystery to me what people go through. But we have to also be real about what's happened in our city. We went from a city that for decades was losing population and that didn't have an unsupportable number of cars to a city that has now grown to the largest population we've ever had. And this is a classic, if you want to think about the famous phrase, victim of your own success, we became a safer city. We became a city with all sorts of things that everyone in the world wanted to be a part of, and our businesses grew and all this great stuff. Well, guess what the downside was? 8.55 million people now, and we're going to be at 9 million people. Not long from now, we're going to be at 9 million people. And in the scheme of things, people became more affluent, meaning compared to 34 years ago, many more car owners. That created dynamics. I don't know who promised what when. I don't mean that to be flip. I'm saying if 20 years ago someone promised no meters, well, they certainly did not envision what's happening today. And part of why we do meters in some places is because they allow for a car to only be there the time they need to be there and then move on, and you know they help in terms of merchant streets, etc. But that doesn't mean we always get it right. And that doesn't mean there aren't some cases where we have to go back and look again. And particularly if you say like we have meters aren't being used, that concerns me. So I wanted you at least to hear why, to some extent, things changed from the past. Now, Commissioner, first on the safety point and then on the meters.
Safety point, obviously, we're grieving tremendously over that fatality. It's nice to see, I see folks from Families for Safe Streets and a lot of the safety advocates that we've been working on with Vision Zero. We're familiar with that corridor, and one of the challenges we face in deciding where to put signals, and we get requests all over the city. We use the test that city all over the country is used. We look at volumes, we look at pedestrian counts, we look at crashes. That had not been a corridor that had met those tests, but we're well aware of the fatality. My safety team is out there looking at what safety improvements we can bring. We're working with PD, so we're happy to come talk more to the community about that one. Obviously, we're grieving about that fatality. On parking, I think, Mr. Mayor, you put it well, which is we have a lot of challenges. We have a lot of demands now from merchants, residents, et cetera, for what is very precious curb space. And we try not to be arbitrary and capricious. We're trying to work with all the community interests. I think it's fair to say we don't always get it perfect, but we're always happy, particularly we don't want to put meters in residential areas. So if we've done that, we'll certainly come, and we have ripped things out or moved them around or changed the times or done what needs to be done if it's not working out the way it's supposed to.
Let's be clear. When we're at one of these things, these town hall meetings, and we're making an ironclad commitment, we'll tell you it's an ironclad commitment. So what I said about 111th Street, that's a decision. But on your parking meters, since we haven't seen yet the situation, or the commissioner has to send her people out to assess, and then we'll give you a clear answer, and her folks will follow up with you directly.
All right.
The woman with the black jacket back here, and then I'll come back. I gotta come, trying to get everybody across the room.
Buenas noches, señor alcalde. Disculpe, esta noche vengo en representación de mi país, quizás estoy variando el tema. Mi país es el Perú, que está pasando por catástrofes actualmente, y yo quisiera ver el apoyo a su persona o a quienes están con usted para poder de repente ver un lugar donde podamos hacer una actividad para crear fondos para nuestros damnificados.
Okay.
Muchas gracias.
He actually first said, I'm sorry, this question might not be specific to New York City. However, as a New York City resident, this country of Peru is going through a very tough challenge, and there are those that they'd like to work with your administration to see if we can give them support for those that have lost in Peru.
I thank you for the question, and because we're New York City, we're sort of the capital of the world, so there's no question about another country that isn't relevant here. But the people feel deeply for their home countries when they're in crisis. And you know, if there's a crisis in Peru or any other country, there are so many people here who are affected. What I'm going to do is we have a member of my administration who's Peruvian, our Consumer Affairs Commissioner, Laura Salas, originally from Lima. And I would like to get her to follow up with you and the people you're working with to see how we can be helpful to the Peruvian community here and to people in your homeland. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amanda Bender. I'm a public school teacher and parent. And my concern is about continued economic and racial segregation in our public schools, particularly even in our integrated neighborhoods. We have one of the most segregated school districts in the country. Is this a concern for you, and what is your administration doing to help integrate our schools?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for what you do. I want to truly honor the fact that you chose to teach. And I want to say, I think today's teachers are making a huge positive impact, and we have a lot to prove it with. And I think our school system is really moving forward. So thank you very much for what you do. I want to first talk about what we are doing, and then I want to very bluntly talk about the limits on what we can do, because I want to be real about it. First of all, we believe there's a lot we can do in a number of districts where there's a chance, for example, where there is a rezoning of schools within the district. We just had this in Community Education District 3 in Manhattan, on the west side of Manhattan, where redistricting of the zones was done with the CDC, with the community, that allowed us to address historic segregation, rework the school zones, and change the nature of the schools in the process in a way that made schools that previously some parents have not been willing to look at much more appealing, and had the impact of encouraging a more diverse setting for everybody. So that's one model. We also had that example in downtown Brooklyn with PSH, and another neighboring school where we saw real success in efforts to, through rezoning and through collaboration between schools, have a real diversification impact. We have found a number of efforts, school by school, to think about not just ethnicity or race, but also income and other statuses that have allowed us to do things that, you know, some of the legal challenges we face if we're only talking about ethnicity and race, but there are a lot of other things that contribute to segregation or to addressing segregation. So a number of schools have come up with their own approaches that we have found really work to create more diversity. We have found that recruitment efforts in terms of high school and middle school, which we've been doing a lot more on, to show people in neighboring communities who didn't necessarily think a school was for them, that it is for them, and do much more aggressive reach out across demographic lines. I think human beings, it's not a shock if you go to visit a school and no one who looks like you is there. For a lot of people, that's not a comfortable enough environment. We want to break through that by showing people that they are welcome, and sort of diversification begets more diversification. So that's one thing we think can be very promising. Then there are some challenges that are tougher, like I am personally fundamentally dissatisfied with what's going on in our specialized schools. My son went to Brooklyn Tech, my son Dante, and Brooklyn Tech is better than some, but still nowhere near representing the totality of New York City. The worst of all is Stuyvesant. Stuyvesant is a wonderful school. It is wildly unrepresented and inappropriately unrepresented. But state law is blocking us from changing that. What I proposed, and I fundamentally believe we will achieve one day as things evolve in Albany, is that specialized schools should not, admission to specialized schools should not be based on a single standardized test. I think that's wrong on every level. So I think choices like admission should be based on multiple measures. I think all assessments should be based on multiple measures. I think if we get rid of the standardized test for those schools, by definition, we're going to open up an opportunity for diversification. Those are all things that are moving, and we're going to be publishing some additional new initiatives to help. Here's the, and I know, sorry for the long answer, but it's a very complex subject, but the simple final point I want to make. Here's where I've got to be real with anyone who cares passionately about this issue, because I feel it too, but I do not want to, you know, the old saying goes, promise you a rose garden. I don't want to tell people I can do more than I believe actually can be done for a simple reason. 300, 400 years of American history of segregation. And that is not going to be solved through our school system. Our school system can be part of creating a new world, no doubt. But if we really want to get to that, that is about fundamental economic change, that's about economic empowerment, that's about giving people resources to get into neighborhoods they couldn't get into before. There's a whole host of things we have to do if we're really going to create truly diverse schools in every quarter, you know, every part of the city, every corner of the city. That's not going to happen during this administration. You know what I'm saying? That's a much bigger piece. But I think the things that we have put in place and are starting to grow rapidly are going to affect the lives of tens of thousands of kids who will experience a more diverse educational setting.
Hi, Lorinda Hooks and mother of Tyler.
You've done good.
I don't have the sneakers. So my seniors, left, right, and Elmcourt, if you would stand, because I'm asking a question on behalf of you guys. So for senior service, I have two senior centers. One is in East Elmhurst and one is in Corona in the left, right vicinity. And we know that you have a big fight against homeless, but my left, right site center is homeless right now. So they have been displaced, and we have been trying to find a place for them to go. This is a center that's been in existence for over 30 years, and right now they're being housed at our Encore gym site, which is much farther away from them. And we have seniors right now who are not getting any services because they can't, seniors like to get to come and go kind of as they need to and not trying to get stuff over, we're talking about 2-3 miles away. Then I have another center in East Elmhurst. My center in East Elmhurst has 70 people a day. We're only operating with just one coordinator who's supposed to do in-house activities as well as home activities at the same time. The other two staff is just somebody to serve food and someone to clean and someone to drive. We have been severely low budgeted, both centers. The East Elmhurst site is the only center.
Getting a little deep into your background. So what the bottom line is, you need a home.
That's one, yes.
So I figured that out quick.
Quick, yes.
I'll also let you figure out how to do that. Okay, so let's speak to this. And is Donna Corrado here? She is. Come on over. So
Well, let's have our seniors sit.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for your strong, intimidating presence. The Commissioner for the Aging, Donna Corrado, before we go into what you might say to it, council member, just to give us a little grounding here. So, center that was serving the community ended up needing to relocate, and there is a plan for a new home, or we have to develop, or do you know it?
It's a little bit
Commissioner's got it, okay?
It's a little bit more complicated. They're in a swing space and temporary space.
Right.
And then learned
that the renovated center that was part of a, that's the Brooklyn diocese, ran out of money, can't finish the renovation apparently, and there may not be an opportunity to go back. So with that, we're looking for a new site for you. And we will also do what we can to negotiate with the Diocese of Brooklyn to see if that, in fact, is a real threat and a real, because we didn't get anything in writing.
Right.
Okay, so we need to have those conversations. But nonetheless, rest assured, we're looking for a new site, although you know it's not always easy in this community because land is at a premium.
So let me suggest this. Commissioner is very diligent and came out of Catholic charity, so she knows her way around. She knows her way around that world. So, Commissioner, could I ask that in the coming days you go out and sit down with the leadership and the seniors there to talk about the plan, talk about available options or how to locate options? A lot of situations like this, and we want to get right to it. In a lot of situations like this, we need not only the help of the council member, we need the help of community residents to, as the Commissioner said, find the right space, which is tougher than ever in New York City. But if everyone puts their heads together, we eventually going to find something. Obviously want the center to have a long-term home.
Yes.
So Commissioner will come out and sit with you and think great thoughts, and let's get to work finding you a home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Councilwoman First. Thank you very much for being here tonight. My question, so my name is Giancarlo and I'm the owner of a modeling business. And last year I got the MBE certification to do business with the city. So my question is about labor. So my question is, do MBEs that have key employees on their payroll that are undocumented, are they at risk or disqualified from bidding on public projects?
I don't think so. Greg Bishop, who's the Small Business Services Commissioner, I gotta tell you, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm gonna do common sense here. I mean, you're talking about a private company. If you employ people, that's your business. And by the way, there's 11 or 12 million undocumented people in this country, so every major corporation in America is probably employing undocumented people, or a whole lot of companies are. But I've never heard of that having any bearing on NWBE contract. No, can you speak to it?
The mayor is correct. Your certification is based on the ownership of the company. And of course, if you are the owner, then there's no issue with your certification. Obviously, if you're bidding on work, again, you have to just complete the work, with the exception with construction, because if you are in construction, you have to pay prevailing wage, you have to show you're paying prevailing wage. But it sounds like in your case, you're fine.
Remodeling, you said, not construction, right? Okay, so
why don't I follow up with you?
Yeah, let me follow up. Sounds like you don't have a problem with but let's make one other point on this, because I think it's important. There's so much concern in this room on the question of immigration. This points out your situation, and the way you asked the question points out the fear that's been created in every way. The question we got before as well. But here's why I think in the end, all the saber rattling in Washington, all the fear creating, just runs aground eventually. Again, there's 11 or 12 million people here. The entire economy of the United States of America depends on them. Everyone in the business community knows it. They know it because they created the reality. This didn't happen by accident. The American business community decided, I'm saying the whole thing, decided that they wanted this source of labor, and they went and got it, and everyone's been looking the other way for decades. So the problem for the Trump administration is, if they go beyond symbolic things, which seems to be a lot of what they like to do, they do symbolic acts and then they leave it be. If they really wanted to try and go at this larger question, they would fundamentally grind the American economy to a halt. And they're not going to do that. They can't do that. So when you talk about a company certifying for MWB, I mean, from my point of view, if that started to become an issue, things will have gotten so bad that the whole contradiction of their policies would actually cause their policies to collapse. I'm saying this, it's very cynical of them and very easy of them to go and arrest a few people and try and make an example of them. They are not, in my opinion, stupid enough to think they can go all over this country and arrest vast quantities of undocumented people because the backlash would be absolutely unsupportable and the economic impact would be absolutely unsupportable. So I think this is in many cases, I'm not taking them lightly, but I think a lot of this is smoke and mirrors and not real. And that means in the end, this is what we have to keep reminding people. In the end, because of the way our Constitution works, our cities and our states do most of the governing in this country. When you think about the things that affect your life, police, schools, public hospitals, bridges, roads, that's the city of New York doing all that. It's not the federal government doing that. Other things the state does. The federal government does not get involved in our day-to-day lives in most ways. So the president has created an atmosphere where people think the federal government's running all the details of our lives. It's just not true. It's just not true. We run our own affairs in New York City. And the federal government's off there doing their thing, but we are going to deal with people the way we see fit, and we're going to keep working with your company.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for coming out to Queens. My name is Will Spizak. I'm here representing Chai Community Development Corporation based in Jackson Heights. My question is about housing. So as you alluded to before, New York is in a housing crisis. Many of us are rent burdened and struggle to find safe, affordable, and dignified places to live. However, a recent study found that approximately 100,000 accessory dwelling units, namely basement apartments and cellars, exist in the city that can be converted into affordable housing units in all 5 boroughs. Now there's a lot of excitement around the ADU initiative in East New York, but what we want to know is how do you plan to scale that pilot project and bring the thousands of basement apartments that many New Yorkers are already living in illegally, and we don't have the same rights as other tenants do. How do you plan to scale that project to bring those apartments up to code so residents can have safe and affordable ADU units? Thank you.
Excellent question, because it's something that's one of the areas we have not, as a city, come to grips with that actually offers real potential to serve a lot of people. Now, again, I think my job is to be real and to not promise people things we can't do. So let's start at the beginning. I used to live in a basement apartment in Astoria, Queens. Proud to say my last bachelor pad. And, you know, there are plenty of basement apartments that are perfectly nice and actually can be updated or rehabilitated so they fit all of our health and safety codes and can be affordable housing. There are other basement apartments that very sadly cannot be made safe enough and right now are being rented illegally and we would not be comfortable with people living in, and we got to deal with how to do enforcement better. What we've never done is made sense of the difference and try to address the positive piece of the equation coherently. We're about to present to Chairwoman Copeland a new budget proposal. And we're looking at something we can do about this very topic as part of that. Because I can't give you an exact number, but whether it's thousands or tens of thousands, whatever number of apartments it is, I think it would be an appropriate thing for the city to be involved, whether through grants or loans or some approach, to get those apartments up to code, but on the condition that they be affordable housing going forward. So we would put, whether it's rent stabilization or some other kind of condition on the equation if we're going to invest in them. I think we did that, we would actually benefit a lot of people. I think we'd benefit a lot of building owners too, homeowners, because then they'd have something that was legal and they could charge a fair rent, etc. I think as we do more enforcement, we're going to find some places that don't work, and that's actually going to be a burden for everyone who's involved. But at least I want to start is let's define the ones that can work and find a way that we can support them to be legal and to be affordable housing.
Bill D Blasio, it's long time no see. It's been an honor to give you my question. My name is Pedro Valdez Jr. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, but I'm here for Town Hall for the very first time.
I'm from Brooklyn, New York too, and I'm here at Town Hall. We have something in common.
We're both Boston, and I'm in Bed-Stuy.
Excellent.
So my question is, we talk about the recent issues of police accountability. So what are the realistic short-term and long-term strategies to improve relations between the NYPD and the general public, especially for families of low income and people of color, without getting involved in conflict with the concerns between the community and the police units?
Absolutely, excellent question. I appreciate it. Okay, so this is where I feel sometimes that it's a very good and fair question, but I feel sometimes that the way if you look at what happens in the day-to-day reporting on these issues, of course the problems get reported a lot, the bad things get reported a lot, but the big positive trends don't get reported a lot. Which is good when we can just have a direct conversation in the community and talk about where things are going. So, I came into office 3 years ago. I said at the beginning that I believe we could be safe and fair at the same time. I wanted to drive down crime. I knew that's never easy. Here's what I found out that's better than I even knew. We were able to reduce stop and frisk by 93% in the course of 3 years. 93%. Meanwhile, these guys went out and 3 years running reduced crime. I want to say that again. 3 years in a row, they have reduced crime. So, whenever we're talking about issues, there's a lot of talk and there's a lot of theories and there's a lot of philosophies, but the facts on the ground are what matter. The NYPD, working with a lot of people at the community level, working more and more often with people at the community level, has consistently driven down crime. So we know immediately that when you start to repair the relationship, it can have a very positive impact, not only morally or emotionally, but in terms of making a difference. Then we know that starting with Commissioner Bratton and following with Commissioner O'Neill, two people I think are exemplary police leaders in everything they've done. They put a huge emphasis on retraining the entire police force in de-escalation tactics. Come into a situation, how do you use the least amount of violence, the least amount of confrontation, and achieve the goal? Which they proceeded to do, and it's had a very big impact. It's been one of the things contributing to the de-escalation, to the reduction of crime. It's been one of the things contributing to the reduction in civilian complaints against the NYPD, which has been consistent. Then, we're adding into the training program implicit bias training. That's going to be happening this year, which is a very honest approach to the human condition. Every single one of us, there's no one in this room who didn't grow up with some kind of biases, because it's a human thing. In every culture, in every family, there's going to be some biases. But when you are tasked with keeping us safe, and by wearing that uniform and carrying that firearm, it's sacred responsibility in our society, you got to do everything you can to get those biases out of the way. People can be trained and help to do that. That is now going to be happening as all our officers are trained. Finally, neighborhood policing, as I mentioned earlier, where you're developing a different relationship between police and community. Puts a high premium on police getting to the grassroots, to a small part of the neighborhood, trying to build those relationships. And we see a huge impact. I can't tell you how many officers I have talked to who are part of our community policing initiative, who tell me what it's like to have neighborhood residents tell them where an illegal gun is, tell them where a gang problem is about to occur, boiling up, tell them where an illegal social club is. These guys have done an outstanding job. Because of history, they are not the authors of American history. They have a whole history we're trying to overcome, right? Because of some, I think, mistakes of policy in the past, our officers got put in a situation that was sometimes felt to be adversarial in our communities. That wasn't going to help them do their jobs. As we healed that and moved forward, they're able to do their jobs a lot better. they are given a lot more ability and freedom and information to do their job, and then we get safer, and then that builds trust on both sides. So there's always more to do. There's always more to do. But, you know, I want people to feel we're New Yorkers, so we're a little tough, but we should also have some pride. We are the safest big city in America. That's an amazing comment on New York City. We all achieve that together. And we are proving that safety and fairness go together. That's the bottom line. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm not putting commissioners over here. There's actually constituents back there. So, well, I have this question.
Good evening, Mayor D Blasio. Good evening, my name is Daphne Pedier. I'm going to speak in Spanish. Yo soy la fundadora de la campaña No Mi Amor, que trabajamos en contra de la violencia. I have the pleasure to marry with your wife to the non-violence last year. My question is, Yulisa, quiero que me la traduzca porque no quiero fallar.
Claro, claro.
Yo sé que la ciudad ha implementado un programa para las víctimas de violencia, pero no estoy viendo que están haciéndole mucho enfoque. Me gustaría saber qué está haciendo la ciudad para ahora que ha pasado esto de las elecciones, porque las víctimas de violencia ahora tienen más miedo. Si antes tenían miedo de denunciar los casos, pues ahora es extremadamente el miedo que tienen por el hecho de que también los pueden deportar. ¿Qué va a hacer la ciudad para hacer que este programa empiece a trabajar realmente? Porque considero, como trabajo con muchas víctimas, que no se está haciendo un trabajo fuerte con ese programa y honestamente, dado lo que se dio con esta presidencia, creo que debe de trabajarse y enfocarse mucho en eso.
Gracias. Esa fue su pregunta. Did you get that?
I didn't get nothing.
Not gonna lie. So the question was focused actually on what can we do to improve what the city is currently doing on domestic violence. Because of what has happened in this past election, she's seen more and more victims that are not willing to come forward to the police department, and that what can we possibly do as a city to do a better job? She knows that there are initiatives out there, but she really hasn't been able to see and feel that work with her clients as she works.
Very good question. I appreciate the question very much. Chief, join me. Come up. Let me start, and I'll pass the microphone to the chief. Let me say this. Look, I think it's a real problem that fear is causing people to not take the steps they could to protect themselves. This is a horrible reality of the atmosphere that's being created. Because again, everyone here in uniform swore to protect lives and all, and now they have another government policy that's actually getting in the way of them being able to protect lives. So we have to be, in everything we do, we have to show that we're going to protect people, we're going to not share information with the federal government, and one of the things, the most important thing that anyone in this room can do is continue to remind people, this policy is not new that I'm talking about, where we're going to not share information and not ask documentation status. It was true in the Bloomberg administration, it was true in the Giuliani administration, it was true even before that. This is a belief and a philosophy of the NYPD. And again, it is in the name of public safety. So we've got to really, all the trusted people like you and your organization have got to keep reminding people that call the police, they are not putting themselves in harm's way. But the other thing I want to say, separate from the question of the immigration problems, is that NYPD has done more and more, and the chief knows a lot about it, and she will go into it, to do something I think that probably needed to be done a long time ago, but today's NYPD has figured out to do it, which is to really have a constant presence if there has been an instance of domestic violence. And we know that tragically, the vast majority of occasions, the victim, the survivor, is a woman. To support that woman by going back to the home consistently. Because I believe if an officer shows up at the home, or a pair of officers show up at the home to check in, a very powerful message for anyone else in that household to not even think about committing an act of violence against that woman. In the past, an incident was treated as an incident, but there wasn't this concept of constantly reinforcing the situation. I've asked some inspectors and captains, in their precincts, how often will they keep going back? And the answer I've gotten consistently is they will keep going back for months and months, as long as it takes, so long as they feel there's anything more they've got to do to keep that woman safe. That's a big, big change. I think it's one of the reasons that we're starting to turn the corner on domestic violence. But Chief, why don't you speak from your ample experience about how this is going to work, and particularly with immigrants?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chief Holmes. Formerly before becoming the Borough Commander of Queens North, I was the Chief of Domestic Violence for New York City Police Department. So I can assure you that there is safety in reporting. If you don't feel safe, first of all, with coming to the police department, there are so many other venues like our DA's office, which has a family justice center. I think Staten Island was the last one to open, so they're now in all 5 boroughs. There's over 35 service providers there, running the full gamut from civil to criminal. So even if you didn't feel safe walking into the precinct, which there is no reason why anyone shouldn't feel safe calling the police department to your home if you feel threatened and maybe you are going to work or going to school, your normal daily activities, and you say, you know what, it's safer for me to walk into the precinct because I don't feel safe if the police show up outside. Maybe something may transpire during that time. Please, you have to really report the incident. So many incidents go unreported. I believe it was 70-something% of the last I checked when I was assigned to domestic violence homicides that either had no previous reports or maybe 1 or 2 reports. So it's very concerning. So I think it is important to report these incidents, and there is no reason for you not to feel safe. As our mayor said, it's our city policy, it's the police department policy. We are not questioning anyone, whether you're documented or undocumented. You're a victim, you need us, call us.
And I just wanted to add that we will follow up because the administration does have a commissioner specifically for DV. There's a DV commissioner that we can follow up with you to talk specifically about the program.
You want to do that? Hold on one second. I just want to add to that answer one more piece.
Good evening. The administrator, my name is Amit Baga. I'm Deputy Commissioner of External Affairs at the Department of Consumer Affairs. We as the Department of Consumer Affairs have been working closely with the New York City Commission on Human Rights on a variety of pieces of legislation, new laws and bills, closely with other members of the administration and with the council on an initiative called Paid Safe Leave, which is your bill. So we wanted to just make sure that you had a chance to talk about that. This would allow victims of domestic violence to be able to utilize time that they could take off of work, specifically to be able to go to family justice centers, seek different types of assistance with the police, with healthcare providers, etc., and this would be time that would be paid. And right now, that type of protection doesn't necessarily exist, so we're working very closely with the council to get that happening.
You're welcome. See what happens when you show up?
Thank you very much. My name is Malcolm Morgan. My question is, Brenda Hooks took my first question. Thank you, sister. The second question is this. For the past 30 years, in that city area, over 22,000 kids presently in the 11368 area of zip code. There's no youth center for the past almost 30 years. How much, 50 years? But yet, there are other cities, surrounding our areas. And they utilize our numbers because our kids have to go out there. Instead of building a youth center here, they have to go there. So I just want to know why for the past 30 years, that these children are disenfranchised about having any type of activities in their areas besides gang banging.
So let me say a couple things. I'll bring up Commissioner for Youth and Community Development too, Bill Chong, but let me say this, that, yeah, I believe fundamentally that we don't want to see our young people go in the wrong direction. But we have lived as a society. I'm not talking about any one administration. We talk about the whole city, the whole society. We've lived for decades in kind of hypocrisy of not really providing the things that would maximize the chance of kids ending up in the right direction. Now, my immediate contribution to this discussion was pre-K. We said we wanted to educate people, kids, put them on the right track. We didn't give them early childhood education. If you're not giving them early childhood education, you're not serious, in my opinion. So we had to change things foundationally. And the second reality was for middle school kids, who I think are a particularly vulnerable, sensitive moment in life, 7th, 8th graders, that we did not have enough after-school options. So with Bill's leadership, we created a universal right to after-school for all of our middle school kids. And now that is, I want you to listen carefully, that is one piece of the equation. That is for, after school on weekdays. It is available citywide. Every child can get that for free. There's still some kids who should be getting it and aren't. So I want to remind everyone in the room, do a quick advertisement. If you know any kids who are 4 years old this year and could be in pre-K starting in September, it's free and it's everywhere in the city, and there's still thousands of spaces available that have not been claimed. Equally with after school, if you know any kids in middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, they get the typical school day, for example, from 3 to 6 p.m. after school to be a safe environment, get tutoring and recreation and culture for free. Every middle school student is guaranteed a seat, but thousands don't take advantage of it. So help us if you know anybody in your family, in your life, we want to get them connected to those opportunities. But to your question, we're trying to right some of those wrongs. But there's no question now that I have had this opportunity as mayor to see the city in a whole new light. One of the things I hear most from communities is the absence of youth centers and youth recreation centers. It's one of the biggest unmet needs in the city, and it is many, many neighborhoods. We are slowly but surely trying to identify opportunities to create these centers to address these problems. I don't know the history in your immediate community, but the person who has to assess what we can do and where we can put investments is standing right here. So, Commissioner Bill Chong, you can speak to it, but then I'd also like you to meet with the folks from the community to hear about their needs and get a sense that this is a place that we might be able to invest in. Go ahead.
To echo what the mayor said, we are committed to creating more community centers. So in the 3 years that I've been commissioner, we went from 80 beacon centers to 174 centers, including centers in public housing. We're about to release new funding opportunity for the Beacon program, and we're adding another 10 new sites. So we are looking to grow the number of community centers, but it's very concrete. It's about space. If there's space to do it, we'll find the funding. So I'll be glad to sit down with you and discuss this further.
This is a very exciting group right here. Everybody's standing up now. I see you. So we're just going to go here because I haven't been here all night. So we're going to get this last question and then I'll come into this section. And as you know, I'm coming around. I'm coming around. This is the tough job. I see why I got it.
Yep. Now you realize.
I see.
We'll get you. Don't worry. We see you.
We see you. We see you.
Coming around. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Malaki Okolo, the Chairman and CEO of Lefrak City Youth and Adult Activities Association. I thank you for being here, and we love our city council. I heard what you said about after school, and thank you very much, Mother Brothers. We have had a community program since 1992 without resources, helping the youth, homework, after-school programs, stop the violence, the whole 9 years. And we have improved the community a lot. But we don't have a space. We've been doing that with limited resources and without space. What can you do to pick back on what he has said.
Thank you.
To
I'm going to double up here.
Thank you,
So
very much.
in the interest of everyone getting around. It's the same exact answer, and the commissioner who's right there in front of you, Bill Chong, well, since you guys are working in the same area, he'll meet with you all together about what we can do with existing space and if there is any possibility to utilize new space. But the important thing is, however we can do it, we want to make sure to maximize opportunities for young people.
So we'll have a youth-specific meeting with the commissioner and all of the residents of Left Rack so that we can talk this through.
It's an honor to be here with a wonderful mayor. You have a good heart, and as a city worker, we thank you when you rectified the mistakes of the Bloomberg administration by giving us much needed raises, standard quality of life, and not take away our health benefits. I'm a proud city worker. I love New York City DP. We love Mr. Sapienza, a wonderful man. And let me tell you something, the reason I'm here. I have 2 children that go to District 25 Queens, PSMS 219 on Gravett Road, in back of Queens College. That is the only school in Queens County, and I want Ms. Tex to listen to this very carefully. It's the only one that has elementary combination